There was a moderator.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I welcome to our 4 o'clock live stream. I think we're calling this the SheCaucs. We may have another guest or two joining us.
Not
and
trans Caucus.
Yeah, not SheCaucs.
No, not
Caucus.
that's a different website.
Oh, I bet. Wow.
So I'm gonna bow out and let you guys talk, and basically talk about whatever you like, what it's like being part of the LP and the Mises Caucus. Those of you who went to the convention, talk about that, and just talk about whatever you like. And I'll be back on at the end in about 45 minutes to announce who wins the silver round this hour. So I'll just let you guys go to it. Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay. We'll see you in a little bit.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
Whitney, you're on mute if you want to speak.
All right, so I wanted to head this up because I feel like my background really applies to this question. Is like, I thought we could talk about what being part of the freedom community, and especially the LP politically, what it does for us as women, as individuals. Because I was thinking about that when we were talking in the chat, because it's really pretty much probably saved my life in a longer story, because it's given me the ability to learn, because I only have an 8th grade education, and being in this community is really, really amazing, because not only does it focus on us as individuals, so I'm not really as much a woman as I may be in other situations, but it's taught me to think, and I'm surrounded by like incredible people all the time that are really intelligent, very educated, and aren't afraid to check you. You know, you're not afraid to tell you that your thinking is a little off or something. So that's what I love about the LP. And of course, because they recognize a woman's right to defend herself, I'm a big Second Amendment fan, and I don't own a gun yet because I'm terrified of them, but it's definitely a future goal.
Oh, we gotta change that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. What about you, ladies? What do you love about the LP as a woman?
Good
Man.
Huh?
No, I think you're right. I mean, with the Second Amendment, I feel like, you know, I guess it's some of the Republicans that talk about it, but, you know, there are other women's issues, though, that the LP touches on that no one else touches on, you know. It's totally quiet. I'm in the airport and it's really quiet, so I'm about to say, you know, we talk about sex workers and legalizing, you know, any kind of labor that's not harming someone, that's voluntary. And that comes down to, you know, that allows us to be able to protect ourselves not only with weapons, but also with the law. When things are legalized and we can implement or we can utilize the legal system to protect our property in that way. So that's just something I would contribute. So.
No, I think that's really important, because I don't know what it's like to be a sex worker. I've actually done sex work, but never on a huge scale. It wasn't for me. But I know that it must be pretty difficult to be out there and to find work and to keep yourself safe. I know that when I was dallying in it, there's a lot of really strange people out there, and I was extremely naive. I'm very lucky that I got out of it without any kind of abuse or damage. But yeah, if you do run into any problems, who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to go to? You know, I know that Craigslist was a big part of that, and they shut that down. So it makes it harder to. I feel like it makes it harder to like actually do that work safely, and it's the stigma surrounding it, and just it's just a really difficult place to be as a woman. And not that I would ever do that again. It wasn't for me, but I know it was difficult, and I can't imagine doing it full time, or really putting yourself out there in a broader sense. That must be really challenging and difficult, and there's a lot of risk involved.
It's exactly. I think it's difficult enough to be in a position where you're faced with an option that the way you get money and get by is by being a prostitute. And on top of that, to be criminalized for that behavior, then you don't really have anyone you can turn to if you do get in trouble, like some pimp picks you up or something. Well, you can't turn to the police because you're going to get charged depending on what state you're in.
Mhm.
So
I
yeah,
don't. So a lot of states, is Vegas one of the only states where you can legally sell sex services? Is that
I
the
think
only
say
one?
Utah.
so.
Did you say Utah or Nevada? Sorry.
Nevada, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
was gonna say
Vegas,
Yeah.
Nevada.
I think so. But isn't it just very heavily regulated, and so it's kind of driven underground again.
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't
a
really
big
looked into it.
mess. It's a big mess because I know too that a lot of times too with the law, sex trafficking and prostitution are kind of in the same batch, or they're registered somehow in the same. So that's why the numbers can be really off for sex trafficking versus prostitution. You don't really know what's really going on because they put everybody in the same category, which is
Yeah.
really unfair. I mean, how we really that data is really important to really gauge what's going on. And now they've mixed it all up, which is of course what we expect when it comes to the state because we know they're all incompetent as hell.
Yeah, you got
There
in.
she
What's
is.
up?
Hey,
How are
you
you?
guys? I've been listening, but I couldn't talk.
Looking
Oh, cool.
classy.
Welcome. We were just talking about, well, first Jessica kicked it off with, what does being involved politically do for you as an individual, as a woman? And Whitney shared a little bit about herself, and we started talking about sex work
Yes.
and just how being
Yay!
criminalized.
But now that Amy's on, because Amy, you're a mother, and so I think you have a unique perspective. I've never had kids; I just have nieces and a nephew, and that's the extent of my knowledge of kids.
Yeah.
So what's it like being, a mother and dealing with the state and dealing with education and how libertarianism helped you there?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because as a mother, you're sitting there and you're faced with making all these decisions for these little people who depend on you. But also, just to protect your own kids, sometimes you have to ask the state for permission, which seems ridiculous because the state is the last thing that wants to actually protect any of us. So you're like begging them for a piece of paper to allow you to do something for your kids when you're like, this is so wrong because I should be able to make this decision. Things like as a single mom, having to, request that ability to make those decisions for my kids from a judge. To me, that's ridiculous because I know my kids better than anyone. So it's just all those those giant hoops that you have to jump through as a mom. Of course, then there's the schooling aspect. And right now, everyone's learning that public schools don't always, have the ability to adjust and adapt quickly in circumstances like this. And so a lot of my friends have pulled their kids out, put them in private schools, started homeschooling them. I'm kind of in a weird situation because my kids go to a charter school, so slightly better than a traditional public school, but
compulsory. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can't just take my kids out to homeschool them while all this stuff is going on and then put them back in when I want, because then I'd have to reapply and hope they get a spot. So the state just makes it so difficult. And I wish that we could have a little more freedom in that. I'm sure y'all have seen it from all of your friends.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, so I like to scroll through Facebook Marketplace and the miscellaneous part and just see what crazy stuff is being sold in my area. And there's a state certified teacher who's selling homeschooling on Facebook. Like, I'll teach 2 to 3 kids and things like that. I'm like, yes.
Oh yeah, we've got little
answer.
pods.
Oh,
All these parents have started doing pods. They have 5 or 6 kids, and they decided that they could work together. And they're like, let's pay a teacher, and then that teacher is able to then make a little bit more money than they would being paid by the state, while also having their own kids. So it's really cool to see this free market solution. And I wish that this could be like a permanent transition from how we rely on the state for our services like that, and go to a little more freedom. And maybe we could not have property taxes that cost us thousands a year. I don't know what it's like in y'all states, but I know here it's exorbitant in Texas. So
That's one of the silver linings about the pandemic, is that we are seeing a lot of people realizing or coming to maybe I can homeschool because they don't feel comfortable, or they're upset with the way that the state's handling. I know my sister is now going to be homeschooling, and I just think that's amazing because you know, I love my niece and nephew, and I really don't want them to be exposed to that. And knowing that they're going to be home with my sister is going to be, that's just amazing. But yeah, people are being exposed to homeschooling, and they're also working more remotely. So this whole thing of decentralization, I think, is kind of falling behind.
It's so great to see all these changes. I know when I went to working from home and suddenly my kids were all home, it was definitely one of those like, oh wow, like I get to actually be with my kids all day, every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of nice to be able to just do that. And I will say, my kids are kind of lucky. Like my daughter has a teacher who's super awesome. And when my son was in that grade, she allowed him to come give information about the Libertarian Party and talk about libertarianism, because in third grade they learn about political parties. And being that we're in a presidential year, I'm sure she'll be extended that same ability to share with her classmates what the third party looks like and what we're all about. So I'm kind of excited to give her those materials again to give a little red pill.
Talk about being the coolest kid in school. That's gotta be it. Being a libertarian.
Well, I mean, think back to when we were younger. I mean, like just a few years ago, like Ron Paul was the cool thing and still is. I mean, he never lost his cool factor with me, but
that's
Ron
funny.
Paul
Yeah, it's so true.
He's 85 now. He just turned 85 today.
So awesome.
Is he still bicycling every day?
Probably. Has he ever stopped?
I thought he like runs every day too, or something like every morning.
He's more fit than me, that's for sure.
Damn, yeah, I'd have to say that too, Whitney. He probably could outbike me.
Oh yeah.
So
on the topic of schooling, you know, we're talking about different schooling. We brought up charter schools and how it's a little slightly better than public schooling. I'm curious, like, to get more into that, and if you guys have heard of the concept of unschooling or self-directed learning.
Yes, I have, and I'm a huge fan, because that's how I got my education. I never went to high school. I had some college, but everything that I've learned was just because I was interested in it. So yeah, I think that's great. I love it. I would definitely entertain that in a heartbeat.
Man, what an interesting background, Jessica, because you're so intelligent and you're so articulate. And what you said, you went to college but not high school. How did you manage that?
Well, my parents, God bless my parents, they really tried to protect us growing up. I went to a Catholic school for about, up until like 8th grade. Yeah, up until 8th grade, I was in Catholic school.
What was that like? I wonder.
Oh, it was terrible. It was awful. It was they were very, very radical. It was very abusive. Not stories I'd like to share on this live stream, because this is supposed to be happy. But yeah, so it was
really? I didn't know.
It was bad. It was really, really bad. And so it got to the point where my parents finally pulled us out because it just got too insane with the abuse. And we homeschooled for like a month. And my parents, this is really funny. My parents sheltered me and wouldn't let me get my license. They were afraid I'd run off or something, which I probably would have done. So I rode my bike. Yeah, in my 20s, I rode my bike to Pearson Education Center, which was some kind of like school in like a really like low income area. I rode my bike up there and I signed up for a GED class. And on the first day, I realized I didn't need it. So I went and took my GED. And by that time, I guess between then and there, I ended up getting a car somewhere along the lines. I think I started working. And I went to a local community college and I started taking business classes, and I maintained it like a 3.9 throughout that. And this is when I was really, really even though I was old as I was still like really immature. Probably I had the emotional maturity of a 12-year-old, but I was really sweet and dedicated. And I knew that there was something out there when it came to education. I had a sense of something. So, but I never finished. But yes, I have almost a 2-year business degree, but everything else is just it's unschooling. It's just things that interest me, and I like to read and just learn. So
yeah, I would say, I mean, for you got out of school early than most. I guess most people go through public school. I wonder if you have, Amy and Whitney, but I certainly did.
Yeah, I did.
12 years. Okay, you too.
Yeah.
But after that, when you leave, and then especially after college, that's really when where you're really forced to adopt self-directed education in that no teacher is telling you what to study. Now you're on your own and you're like, okay, what kind of career do I want? What's the next, level for me? What do I study next? And you pursue it all yourself. So the philosophy of unschooling and self-directed education is really tied with libertarianism. It's focused on you as an individual. Your thoughts, your will matters. What you want in your life matters and should be respected. And some people think with children that you have to like tell them everything they need to know. But my opinion is that children are naturally curious. I have a colleague, or not a colleague, a friend. You guys might know him, Alex Vidal of Free Knots. His son is so cute. Whenever we see him, like he knows so much about the digestive system of dinosaurs. But no one told him, like his parents didn't tell him, like, oh, look into the gallbladder and how the stomach works. But this kid is just so interested in that.
That's
And he's
awesome.
when he was telling me that he was like 5, you know,
Yeah.
it's just this example of how parents can help guide a child, protect them, but ultimately leave it up to that kid to pursue their interests. I think the one thing though you can start off with, if you just teach a kid how to read, and kids, Amy, you probably can speak to this with your own kids, they naturally wanna know what the words are because they kinda wanna read.
It's interesting
Yeah.
you say that because I have twins who
Mhm.
just turned 5 a few days ago, 4 days ago.
Oh,
And
cool. Congrats.
one of them does have that natural curiosity. And he's like, give me more. I need to know this. And he's like, what does a voice box look like? And he made us Google that. And he's like, I want to know what the voice box looks like. And he just has this fascination with people's voice boxes. I don't know why. But then, like, in contrast, his twin brother is like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to read. Can you just show me the answer and do it for me? I really, this is not beneficial to me. But then, like, he does it and he knows it and he's good at it when we have him do it. So the unschooling thing, like, I think definitely like appealing to their curiosity is a good thing. But then there are some kids who do need a little bit more of like that guidance of like, hey, by learning, this opens up, like learning to read, this opens up your opportunity to then be curious about whatever other subjects interest you. So there's that like one line of knowing your kid. And I think that's, a lot of people don't even know their kids these days. They don't really know the difference, or they think that all kids fit into this one box and that every kid should have to follow like whatever curriculum. But they were in Montessori school last year, and one of them was just doing so well, and it is very much like unschooling, and he just thrived, and it's the one who loves the voice box. The other one, it was like all year he just wanted to do the same thing, and they'd try to guide him, and he'd kind of take a little interest, and then he'd be like, ugh, that's too much work. That is way.
I'm curious, what was he super interested in?
The one who was interested in things, he's just anything pretty much. I know the one who wasn't as into the academic part, he's more interested in like cutting things with a knife.
Oh, okay.
So like
more physical.
He is, yeah.
Hands-on.
And so it's been really interesting, but he's been making some strides these last few weeks, since just kind of being that kindergarten age. But it's so interesting how kids, that's why I think the education system is so lacking, is that
Definitely. Yeah.
they try to sound like they're trying to accommodate every kid. And they're like, oh, we want all these teachers to differentiate learning, which is an insane burden to place on teachers, because even the best teachers, the most professional ones who care about like getting that natural drive to kids, there's only so much they can do to differentiate learning for 25 students at a time.
What is
like
that mean, by the way? Like change your style of teaching? Or
yeah, so the differentiation that they talk about in like the public education system is more, because my mom's a teacher. So what they're talking about is like, you've got some kids who come in and they can't really read. And then you've got other kids who are like, give me more. I need to learn all this stuff. And so the teacher's then tasked with like, okay, I got to meet this kid where they are, which is a great thought, right? Like it sounds awesome in theory. But when you've got like half your class right here, and then you've got like 5 kids here, it just turns into a kind of silly thing. And no matter how hard they try, like no one's going to be able to fill that as well as someone can who's intimately knowing that child in a home basis. And until we decide that we're going to take control over our own children instead of relying on others to do it, we're not going to see that change. So
Yeah,
definitely.
those are great points. How like teachers, it's like one teacher, and the class sizes keep increasing too.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. You have less and less personal attention that a teacher can even give to a student. So then otherwise you're stuck with like a one size fits all. Everyone, by in 1 week finish this paper, and there's no attention. And funny enough, they tell you go home and work with your parents to finish the homework anyway.
Right.
So it kind of like ends up still putting some of the burden on the parents. So
and then it's
I
so
like the points that you guys make about teachers, because I think sometimes when we talk about education, it seems like
your
we're
book, by the way.
demonizing teachers.
talking about
Yes, thank you. I'm almost done. I'm like your other kid that doesn't like to read, but I love just knowing things. So, but I feel like when we talk about education, some people get defensive about teachers, but that doesn't mean that we're demonizing teachers. We want to enable them to be the best teachers and to give the students the best education. And so that's why I think it's I like the points that you made, Amy, because my grandparents, they're retired teachers. They've been in education their whole lives. I've got a lot of friends that are teachers now. So I really respect the good teachers that want to help students, and we should enable them, to do so. So
exactly. And part of the way is by not having our money going to bad teachers who are protected by
unions.
Yeah,
unions.
That's such a common word. It just slipped my head. There are some teachers that stay there for years and like they're the worst. They're so mean.
Yeah.
They're just collecting your taxpayer money. So one of the ways we do that is bringing the free market to education and actually getting rid of the taxpayer funded schools.
Have y'all seen that Facebook post that was floating around? And it was like, if you're a teacher who doesn't want to go back into the school this year, find like 5 kids who want to be homeschooled and charge their parents this much money and have a pod. And now you can make like $100,000 instead of what you were making previously. And
it's less kids.
Viral. Yes, it's fewer kids. So they're getting to have a better, more one-on-one education, more custom made. And then the teacher has the freedom to be like, hey, I've always wanted to be able to do this with my kids, but I've never had the time, because we get like 30 minutes for each subject before they're shipped off to the next thing. And I just think that's so cool that people are starting to like have these epiphanies, and it's feeling that empowerment. And of course there's some parents who I think are still like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm being put in this position to have to do this.
Definitely.
And that's where that solution comes in, where you can like, hey, if you're not paying $12,000 a year in property taxes, you can then put that towards this. There's actually a private school that's a half homeschool, half private school in my area. 3 days a week you go in, and they do like classical education. So you're getting your School of Logic and your reading, writing, arithmetic, all that stuff. So all the basics that you want your kids to come out knowing. But then the other days of the week, it's homeschooled and it's home led. And it's cheap. I could put all 4 of my kids in that school, and it would cost me $14,000 a year for all of them. And that's
the problem is that money is already taken from you, so you can't.
Yep, they already get $12,000 a year in property taxes. So it's like my property taxes would almost cover that. So
I don't think people understand how much money goes into administration, how much is wasted on administration. My grandpa was a superintendent before he retired, and he said it's the most pointless job.
Yeah, he was paid,
but he was paid
so
well,
much.
wasn't he?
Yeah,
superintendents make good money.
They make like
years at my school, and we were a small school in Arkansas.
In our area, it's like $300,000 to $400,000 a year.
Oh my God! These companies, what kind of value are they providing?
That's government efficiency.
Exactly.
If there's a school board making decisions, you don't need a superintendent.
Let the teachers have a little more freedom. I mean, geez, if we're going to have public education, let's let the professionals who went to school to teach do that. I mean, that's why we also have so many teachers exiting the field, like new teachers who last maybe 1 or 2 years. And they're like, I did this because I thought I loved kids, but I didn't realize that I hate the administration.
Bureaucracy. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to say too that the education system is just so outdated on so many levels. It's we're just beating a dead horse here. So, like I said, it's nice to see the silver lining come from the pandemic, where parents are actually entertaining new options, and like the pods you said, that's so cool. It's nice to see that happening in the world. Little silver lining.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few. I'm noticing.
From the shutdown.
And pissing people off when you go shopping without a mask.
Oh, I'm not wearing a mask right now in the airport. I don't know who's freaking out.
You rebel.
Rebel. Oh, no one said anything, so we're good. But yeah,
You wear it if you get on the plane, or how's that?
I do. If private companies ask me, I'll put on a mask. I'm not gonna go Karen on people, but
Yeah.
it's also too big for me, so it doesn't even matter.
And it doesn't really protect you.
Yeah.
I know, because the air is leaking out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, if you decide to, like, as you said, go Karen, usually there's someone else will go Karen on you and have to, like, then you'll be in a argument about which Karen side should you be on, not masking or masked.
Right.
Yeah, funny.
Hey, I've got an interesting question for Whitney. So Whitney, you I know you work in engineering and it's a very male-dominated environment, as well as the Libertarian Party, which is also very male-dominated. What parallels can you draw from the two environments?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Logic or
Just everything. Yeah.
what kind of engineer are you, Whitney?
I'm electrical.
Ooh, that's so cool.
So
Software.
Nice.
I'm not good at software, it's hardware, but okay. Oh, you're in software.
Yeah.
That's what you said. Oh, cool. Yeah, there we complement each other. So
male dominated for sure.
let's see. So maybe your input would be good too. When I was an undergrad, I was one of five out of 50, 60 students in the class, one of 5 women. So, hanging out, it was usually like just me and a bunch of dudes, and they didn't have a lot of game. I always find myself to be a wingman in all these, circles, social circles. I don't know. But, I went into engineering and I went into libertarianism thinking I was going to get judged for being a woman. Like I'm not as intelligent or things like that. Or if I'm too outgoing or too talkative, then I'm not as intelligent. But I haven't really ran into that, thankfully. Even though, there's not that many women, I feel respected, as a female engineer in my industry and as a libertarian. So, there's pros and cons to everything. So I just got to give them props that I've never felt like an outsider,
Oh, cool. I can say the same for me. I mean, definitely similar experience, like going through the classes for computer science. Yeah, mostly males, like 80% males. And then working, yeah, it's mostly males. And I'm sure if you go to LP stuff, it is mostly males. And then if you see women, they're usually married. So much more single men than there are single women, even in the liberty movement, which is interesting. But yeah, I personally haven't felt, like discriminated against just because I'm a woman. Funny enough, actually, some places like the bigger corporations you go, they actually want to have like that quota, right? Because there's that social pressure and scrutiny. So funny enough, it can somehow benefit you nowadays with that sort of culture SJW reaction. But I always whenever I get this question, I've had like some big companies, they started having like a diversity and inclusion department, and they'll ask, I've gotten the compliment like, oh, you're a woman software engineer, good for you. And I'm like, I mean, that's just like personal choice. Is like, I don't get to focus so much on like how many girls there are. And I love to bring up, where are the third wave feminists when it comes to representation of women in the dirtiest jobs, like working in the sewers, taking out trash? That's pretty much almost all men, like the most dangerous, dirty jobs where you can say men are disposable. Like, no, there's no feminists like being like, hey, I want this job. They want the high jobs. They want the STEM. They want the high status. They never talk about the lower status jobs that are
the trades,
heavily male dominated.
Yeah, that's a great point.
They want to look good by while they're being dominated. They don't want to be like picking up trash. That's you're looking, because I work in nuclear, and so I know what it feels like to like, we're dressed out in PPE, and sometimes it's really nasty. So yeah.
Yeah, it could be dangerous too.
Yeah, it's also always funny to me when people find out I'm an engineer and they're like, "Good for you." I find it kind of offensive.
Like an extra. Okay. I know, because you're a girl. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You're like, can I have a cookie now, please?
Yeah. I'll just take advantage. Sure, you want to give me a higher raise? All right.
Yeah.
I benefited when I ran for state senate here in Texas. I benefited from the culture of the feminist culture, because the male opponent had like a dick pic scandal at the time, and so he wasn't showing up for any of the debates. So then by default, they're like, well, we need at least 2 candidates to have a debate for our news segment. So hey, would you like to?
Who is this?
This is in Texas. Yeah, this is in like just north of Austin, but of course everything's gerrymandered, so the district runs all weird directions. But yeah, so like I was invited to these televised forums that I might not have been included in if there had been 2 other candidates. So I ended up becoming friends with my Democrat opponent, and we're still friends to this day. Even if we have complete differences. Yeah, like we might have just total differences in policy and how we believe things can be achieved, but we bonded over the things we do agree with, and ended up becoming personal friends. So it's kind of interesting how everything works out. But yeah, I never felt like as a woman, like, there was anything, I don't know. I'm like, if you don't see my merit, then that's on you. That's not on me.
Yeah. I will say this, a lot has changed, culturally in the past, 50 years, So nowadays it's the culture, for example, of professionalism is known already by default to be inclusive of opinions, of, be respectful of somebody. That's already part of the culture of professionalism. So I just found it a pet peeve to like focus so much on forced diversity, instead of like focusing on ideas and what somebody is saying, their philosophy, not necessarily, oh, we got to make sure that we have like 5 Indians, make sure like 3 of those Indians are girls. Like, it's just so dumb. And it's unrelated to being professional or being knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's just so silly. Well, it's such a silly rule. But yeah, Whitney, what did you say earlier? I wanted to comment on. Now I'm having some brain fog. It'll come back to me. Sorry.
I wish this was in person. It'd be fun,
right?
Yeah. Well, I have to hold my phone up. It's like
right. Yeah.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you, girls. I don't know if we could tie this into libertarianism, and I don't know how many of you are single, but I wanted to talk about this is probably not libertarian.
Do it.
But the date, how there's no dating. This is how I was going to tie it in. So, Whitney, you mentioned that you're always the wingman for these guys who have no game. And I've been, I'm not the best at relationships. In fact, I suck at them. But I realized that one of the things that makes relationships so difficult these days is that there's no formal structure for dating anymore. It's all these like hanging out and hook up and like, if some guy asks me want to hang out, I'm like, dude, I'm not 17. I'm fucking 43. No. Go away. I'm not brushing. Yeah. But yeah.
Is that what they do? Tinder swipe. You're like, fuck you, I'm 47.
Yeah, it's like
Hopefully, if you're 47, you're not on Tinder, right?
That's true.
Yeah, no, I don't do apps. I'll meet you in
So
person.
awful.
But yeah, so there's no structure in dating, and I know that a lot of the LP guys are single, but I think it has a lot to do with the overall. There's just so many cultural things now that don't really help create healthy relationships. A lot of times, there's drugs and alcohol, which are great in the right place, but when you're getting to know someone, you have to take your time. You have to know what you're doing. You've got to be emotionally healthy. There's just so many. It's kind of a complex process. That's how I look at it now. If you're not together, you're not going to be attracting people who are together, and it's going to be a big, explosive, chaotic mess. So, but yeah.
It's also confusing now what the rules are. So when my boyfriend and I first started dating, because he knew I was a libertarian, for some reason he thought I was a liberal and thought I was a feminist. And so he never paid for the date until, dude, and that's partly on me too, but I was like,
generalized you.
yeah. Why is he not paying for a date? Does he not care about me? What's going on? And then this lady came up whenever we were just going Dutch, right? And she's like, "Oh, is this a new thing that like millennials do, or what's going on?" I was like, "No, he's just not paying for me." Anyways, we got that worked out. But there's simple rules like that where, at the time I was making more money than him, so I felt okay with splitting it. So now he makes more money than me, and I'm like, okay, you can treat me out. That's fine. But it's confusing now that there's working women, and we can pay for things. But at the same time, I grew up in the South, and it's kind of like you have to court me and things like that. So I don't know what my views would be, and I don't know what I would teach my children at this point. So, what are your thoughts on the dating rules like that?
My boys better pay for their ladies' meals, and they better open those doors for their ladies, and they better be chivalrous. I don't care how old-fashioned that is or how feminist that chick is. They better, or I'm going to come right over there. Even if she can pay, even if she has the money, they will show them that level of respect. I think that's definitely... It's not about that the woman can't. It's not about the inability of the woman. It's just a matter of, someone, especially being that men, a lot of times get the rep that they just want to hook up. I think that's a way for a man to show that they're truly interested and that they're of value to you. And, I don't know. I think that's just one of those old-fashioned things that I will never let go of. And my sons better do it. And if my daughter brings home a guy who I see is allowing her to do that, he will not be on my good list.
That's interesting. Oh, a great topic, Jessica. I guess it's not necessarily about libertarianism per se, but I think it's still very important. For me, as a philosopher, my focus is philosophy, and the biggest thing I promote is self-knowledge. Like, before you can even think about, truth and falsehood of the world, you need to understand your own biases and why you think the way you do, why you have your opinions. So on that token, I think self-knowledge is also necessary for relationships. Like, you should know yourself, you should know what you value, before you get into one. For me personally, the way I met my husband was I hit him up on Facebook and I liked his comic, and also I thought he was hot. Hey, you gotta have at least an attraction, right? But I liked his philosophy. He's a voluntarist, and I hit it up and we talked for hours. And I think that's one of the best things you can do if you're really serious about, I eventually want a monogamous long-term relationship. Really first know yourself. What do you want? Work out your issues. I think a lot of us from public school or just parents who are either neglectful or physically or emotionally abusive in some way, we got to work that shit out. You should know that about yourself, and if you have habits that you developed from then. But yeah, I think just having like deep philosophical conversations and just really knowing someone's values. I love asking about someone's childhood. That can be a nice sign of how they've processed their own upbringing. That could be a nice icebreaker too. And I think it's a red flag the more resistant and uncomfortable someone is.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or they give you like a short, like, I mean, my parents, they're okay, but whatever. I don't know. It just, if they're just like averse to, these serious questions of childhood upbringing, that's a red flag for anyone who wants a long-term
Such a red
partner and kids, right? Like, yeah. Amy, it seems to really resonate with you.
Yeah, I have an ex-husband, so of course it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. But as libertarians too, we have to also remember, is it an option for us to allow someone in our personal lives who doesn't share similar values in liberty? If someone worships the state, is that ever going to be compatible with one of us who doesn't worship the state? Another thought.
That's so true.
That's
Gosh,
such a good topic.
Can't go there.
We'll save it for
We
later.
could like spend a whole session. But I see who joined. Michael, I like your shirt. Niece's Caucus.
Thank you. Boys at the slumber party.
Woohoo!
Mike's changing his shirt every hour.
I got it all laid out.
And I am too, but all my shirts are black, so it doesn't.
Well, I will say, babe, if you can come here. Just come here. You're holding up the live stream, babe.
Come on.
Emily.
Yes, you do.
I've heard so much about Michael's lady, but I've like never met her.
So
I know.
I am not a SheCauc, obviously, but Emily here is, and I just want to publicly thank her and introduce her to everybody. She supports everything I do. She puts up with all of my crazy shit all the time that I put in.
Oh, you're the one.
They put up with your crazy shit too.
But yeah, there'd be no Mises Caucus as we know it, at the very least, without her support, without her acting as my rock. So that's my SheCauc contribution.
And let's all honor Carol Paul too on Dr. Paul's birthday. She is the ever faithful wife. At every event I've ever attended with Dr. Paul, I've seen her right there with him, and she's always just the kindest lady. So here's to the ladies of liberty who might not be the most vocal, but
oh yeah, hold on.
Ooh, that coffee was room temperature.
I've never got to meet either of them, but they sound like
Carol is very, very sweet, very, very welcoming. I was lucky enough to be at their house last year, and yeah, she makes a great meal, and like I said, she's very, very welcoming. And what was funny is I remember me and my dad went to visit and interview Ron Paul right before he left office. And my dad was sitting in the congressional office talking with her, and he had no idea who she was. He thought it was just some sweet old lady that was, in the in the office. Yeah. So
and she makes
real
quilts
quick
for all of her kids too. Like Rand, she's made quilts of all of his campaign shirts. I mean, that woman is just the perfect example.
So real quick, this is
I love it
because from here on out, I'm pretty sure everybody that we're going to have on the streams was part of the Ron Paul revolution. So I'm going to ask everybody today, and if we can do this in like a firing line manner, what is the SheCaucs' favorite memory of the Ron Paul revolution?
Oh God.
Can you guys hear me that well? They're kind of vacuuming.
I can hear you.
Good. Okay. Can I tell one about
Yes.
Carol, actually?
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So I was campaigning for Ron Paul in 2012 in New Hampshire, and he flew out and Carol flew out to meet all the volunteers. And my boyfriend at the time, his brother was a Romney supporter. And so we told Miss Carol, and she was, get him on the phone right now. I want to talk to him. So we called up his brother, and she just sat there and chatted with him for a couple of minutes. And was like, you should really consider voting for my husband. I don't, why are you voting for Romney? Like, let's talk about it. And after that phone call, he was like, that was so cool. I'm going to vote for Ron Paul. This is great. So I found both of them to be like that, where they're open to talking to people, and especially students and younger people, trying to inspire the younger generation. So I thought that was pretty cool.
They seem genuinely passionate about liberty, like the fact that she'd do that and she's not in the limelight. It's awesome.
Right.
That's so
I'll
cool.
just go next real quick. If for me, I never campaigned. Actually, I became a libertarian like after 2012. But my favorite clip of the Ron Paul like revolution 2012 is when he's on the debate stage and he's like talking to a bunch of, they said, social conservatives in South Carolina. He was talking about heroin. I just love that clip because he forces them to extract the principles that they want for freedom of religion. And like at the end of that, everyone's cheering for them. And I love how the moderator even of like, what is it, CNN or whatever, is like, oh, okay, I didn't know that they would clap so loud for heroin.
That was
Nice,
awesome.
like refreshing thing that he did. He was able to extract the principles and get people to be like, okay, you're right. I should be okay with gay marriage if I want freedom of religion too. So best clip for me.
I guess I'll go next. I don't really have a memory that I can recall offhand, but overall I can say that my favorite aspect about Dr. Ron Paul is the beautiful example that he has led with. He's just never stopped. He's written over a dozen books, 5 kids, married over 50 years. He's never wavered in his principles. He's got very high standards. He's extremely consistent, and he's not stopped. He's still out there fighting for liberty. He's still creating content, and it's just he's like a star in the sky of liberty for me to look up to and how to shape my own personal activism and career.
Absolutely. I think my favorite thing about Dr. Paul is the fact, like what someone else was talking about, is that they don't care about how old you are. I think it's so great that he has been able to show, as a man who has, gotten older and older in politics, and he still sits there and he's like, I have respect for the younger generations too. Instead of like these old crony politicians who are like, you know nothing, you're young, you have no idea how things work, because they've all been corrupted. And he just sits there and he still stands true to his principle. And every time you see him, he says, in the Fed. And I just love that. So, I just love how he's so inclusive to everybody. Anyone who's for liberty is for, Dr. Paul. And I love that. So
I love it.
Me too.
Hey,
That's
shout
really
out
awesome.
Ron Paul, Liberty Report.
happy
Watch
birthday.
Yeah, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dr. Paul.
Well, awesome.
We all love you. Please don't die.
Oh,
Jesus Christ. Well, on that note,
live forever.
we're gonna have to end this stream and get ready to bring on Michael Bolden from the 10th Amendment Center. So I hope all the viewers that are watching now are ready in about 10 or 12 minutes to hop right back in, get to sharing, get to donating, and talking with Michael Bolden. So ladies, thank you very much. Thank you for everything that you guys do for the Mises Caucus. It's decentralized work, and you guys all are a part of that. And we're killing it, man. People are they won't say it, but they're jealous as shit of us. And they're jealous of what we have, and they should be, because we're friggin' awesome. So thank you guys, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Bye.
good to meet you, ladies. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
I'm going to announce the winner of the first silver round right now, and that's Austin Walter in Indiana. He gets one of those. And,
Nice.
It's I'm in Ohio, and we've had a winner in Kentucky and Indiana, so they're getting closer to me, but I still haven't won anything. Even if I won, I don't think I could take anything, right, Mike? I mean,
yeah, no, we'd have to.
No,
for fairness' sake.
I would roll the dice again if my name came up. And my name is on the list of recurring monthly donors. I haven't checked it in the last 20 minutes or so, but I think we were at 369. I think, but I'm sure we got a few more.
No, we're at 374.
Okay,
375, and we are $10 away from $5,000 a month. So you can be that person that puts us over $5,000 a month. And right now we are in the middle of candidate support season. Convention season's over. Candidate support season is in. You saw 2 of the endorsed candidates that we gave money to. That didn't include Andre Kloss, who is another awesome candidate who is running for county commissioner down in Seminole County, Florida. He actually just won the straw poll in that county for that race, so really looking good there. And our goal is to spend $15,000 this year on local level candidates. So we need all the help we can get. You can start by getting us over $5,000. And I guess now is a good time to end the stream and hop on back over to talk with Michael Bolden.
Yeah, we'll be on with Michael in about 10 minutes, and you can take those 10 minutes to go over to lpmisescaucus.com/donate. We'll see you in a few minutes, Mike, okay?